Anyway, back yeah, and it's funny because we had so much other moving around going on. We're finally into what would have been third segment. And what is it? We're going to talk about the Crow. We kind of hinted talking about the Crow last week, but I guess maybe it was a misnomer that when I said that we were having an all Crow uh, episode, and but there's still regular business that ends up happening on a show of this nature, such as comics, especially with everything moving around so much. But you know what? There's still a lot of stuff that we want to talk about. Actually, I got to read the comic again. I've been hearing the soundtrack all over again. That was kind of very interesting. I didn't know if what is it? If Richard was going to join us, or he's stuck at a shoot right now. I'm not sure if he was going to join us, but let's go ahead and let's dive into what we've been calling the All Crow episode. The first thing we want to do is Roland, when did you first hear about the Crow, or when was it on your radar? Because we were in and out of different comic books at the time. I know when I first ran across it, but I want to find out when you had that opportunity to either see the character or the comic book or whatever it was. I don't know if it was the movie first, then the comic book, or vice versa, or what was it?
Well, I grew up around some people who liked it. Well, really, it was coming from you, and because I wasn't allowed to read the comics because they were collectors, and so I think finally when you, I was like, look over your guys' shoulder. I knew the story about it. I was excited about who was going to play it. So mine was more closer to before, like when they started filming the movie. You talked about the comic. I remember seeing the covers. Black and white. It was a lot different. I mean, and to me, I think that was probably my, like, actually delving in and looking at an independent comic. Growing up, I just thought there was DC and Marvel. And, to me, I think, so like I said, it was probably before the movie. I know Image and Valiant became, I guess they would be considered independent, but I mean, they still kind of followed a code almost. So I think seeing what you guys were looking at, with the Crow, that was like, did that guy just get his legs cut off? Did he just, just get shot, just point blank? I mean, it changed my view of what comics could be. I was, it wasn't, it wasn't I don't know. It wasn't just superheroes at that time. I mean, for when I saw that, because that's usually what we had, superheroes. And even though there's supernatural elements, there's super power type elements, this is, this was just a story. I didn't know that there could just be stories like this. So I would say, it was a while, like, before they started filming. They started, picking who was going to be it because of that. And finally, whenever, like I said, I would look it over your shoulder, or Richard, and then it wasn't until the trade paperback came out that, I finally got to own it and just look at it. Just look at it. I mean, we'll get into that later on, but it just changed my view on what comics could be and what they were. So
when I ran across this, it literally had to be 1992. These books, and specifically, it was not the first run of the Crow. There's no way this would have been on my radar with Batman and all this, and there's no way that these stores locally would have had these issues. These issues had print runs of less than 10,000 unless you were a novelty store that specifically catered to these underground comics. And there was only one store at the time that would have probably uh, would have been Collector's World in some roundabout way, maybe. And I don't even know if Myth Adventures was already on the in the South Texas in our Corpus Christi area, but I really highly doubt that the Crow would have been on anybody's radar. So we zoom ahead, rumblings in books and all that kind of stuff, and comic scene and everything as things are going. So the way things are in the comic book world, something is made and then it's going to be reprinted. Well, that's when Tundra comes out, and what I ended up running across was in 1992. I walked into Myth Adventures, probably on my journeys of looking for more Crow, not Crow, but Speed Racer books. I,
Hmm.
I used to go everywhere just looking for Speed Racer books, and they would have a flat table and they would have their new releases on it. And right there on display are three all black books that say The Crow and J.O.Barr on them, and it's The Crow, and on the bottom it says Volume One, and what is that? What Pain and Fear, which is this one that you're seeing right here, and it's all red, imprint of The Crow. It's almost like just black and red. With various degrees of red shading, and then you have book two or issue two, which would have been what does it say here? Irony and Despair. That was book two, and it's Eric Draven and Shelley's in the background, and you have a bloodied hand up to his touching his forehead and stuff like that. And it's all black again, same motif with the picture centered on the top middle. And then of course you have issue three, which just immediately striking, and that's Death. And he's got his hands kind of out in front of him, all bloodied. He's sitting on the ground, cross-legged and stuff like that. And that was book three. These were 1992. These were just, you could not notice these books just sitting there, all black, looking amazing. The artwork just, I had to look thumb through these things, and I'm like, The Crow, what the hell is this thing? And I'm over here looking for Speed Racer and all this other kind of stuff. So believe it or not, I didn't jump on these right away, and then I even looked at the glass shelf where they had cards and all this kind of stuff. The portfolio of James O'Barr was in there with large prints, autographed prints of these covers in there, along with some other prints and stuff like that. So I was I me, I get obsessed with certain things like that, and it starts eating away at my head, and I'm just kept, what, I need to go back. I need to go back and pick up whatever that was, whatever the Crow books were. And I ended up picking up those three books. I went back, and sure enough, that book one, book two, book three, and I picked those up. I think we were going through, it had to be Comic Scene or Wizard or whatever, and they made an announcement. I was already a big Bruce Lee fan, but then they said The Crow, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's that book I just picked up. And they said Brandon Lee has been attached. The son of, no, it said this. It didn't even say Brandon Lee. It said son of Bruce Lee attached to play the lead in The Crow, something to that effect. And I was like, wow, the son of Bruce Lee is going to be this character. And then after looking at the book, you're like, holy smokes, this is going to be incredible. Now, somewhere along the way, the trade paperback comes out. Either two trade paperbacks that collect all of this, but now Kitchen Sink owns this property now. And then later on, they make a second printing of that trade paperback where it says now a major motion picture, I believe. Isn't that what it said, or
I don't think
something?
so. Because see, this one right here
Yeah,
doesn't say that, but
in the inside it says somewhere in there.
well, no, what the inside does say is in memory.
Yeah, so that book obviously that collects. So maybe the trade paperback came out after. I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I could look up a printing of when the. You know what? I'll do it right now.
I remember. You know what? When you were saying about that, I remember because when you said that Bruce Lee's son was going to be in The Crow, a comic book, the first thing I thought of was, again, like I said before, superhero. Oh wow, he's going to be a superhero. But like I said, I didn't really know
94,
that much about
94, 1994.
I didn't know that much about the uh, the Crow. So when you said that he was going to be a comic, I just automatically assumed he was going to be some superhero, you know, superhero. I remember that now, though.
On the release of the Crow trade paperback came out the collected hardcover edition, and packed with that hardcover edition, which was limited to 1,500 copies. It was a hardcover edition of that same artwork as the trade paperback that my brother showed there. But you also got a CD of Trust Obey, which was the Fear and Bullets original soundtrack, which was supposed to be the soundtrack for the comic book. And,
Mm-hmm.
and that was something that had come out. Roland Richard is stating here he got his trade paperback autographed.
Oh, here we go.
I can't even drink anything. That's the only thing I don't like about a refresher. Have you ever had a refresher from Starbucks?
Mm-hmm.
You try drinking it and it's like the fruit gets stuck in a stupid hole and it's Augustus Clue all over again. He's destroying my chocolate. Anyway, so
Well, real quick,
yeah, yeah,
you give what year did The Crow come out in?
1989. But okay, wait. The Crow book came out in 89, but I want to say prior to that, Crow Caliber Presents was a preview, I want to say maybe 87 or 88. And that was the first several page preview. And that was in a special Caliber Presents #1. And it's just like
He
just a couple of
originally wrote
pages.
this though in '81, right?
I think, or pieces of it or whatever. I don't know.
Well,
It's
because
almost mythical
the copyright jumps from '81 to '89, then '92 and '93 for this book,
on that one.
because the story takes place in like '80, doesn't it, or '81? Because there's a picture of Eric and what's her face, and it says like '79.
What, an actual picture?
Well, no, like in the draw in the comic, it's supposed to be him and her at the beat. Here, I'll pull it up. Keep talking.
No. And well, that's what I'm going to look up real quick. Crow Caliber Presents came out in 1989, and then I'll read it verbatim here. The series was originally created by O'Barr as a means of dealing with the death of his girlfriend at the hands of a drunk driver. This was first published by Caliber Comics in 1989 and became an underground success. And it was adapted into the film by the same name in 1994. 3 other films and numerous books have been made. February 1989, The Crow came out on Caliber. And then its first appearance was in Caliber Presents in January of '89. I'm trying to look. The first time The Crow appeared on the back cover was November 1988. So, yeah, we're seeing some different.
Well, I'm guessing the story, because like I said, the pictures drawn in there say August '79 and like October '80. So, which was probably the last, in the book. So I'm just saying, like, I guess because I mean, it wasn't like his actual girlfriend died and then he did this comic. And then he joined the military and stuff like that before he even
Yeah.
something. I don't know. We'll go on. I'm jumping ahead. Anyway, you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, the theory or the story of the character is almost mythical. As far as where the account came from, as far as where it says here 1978, Jamz O'Barr. We're going to get into Jamz O'Barr now because I think this is a
Yeah.
logical thing. It says in 1978, O'Barr listed in the Marines. He was stationed in Germany. He illustrated combat manuals for the military before entering the Marines. Now, this is what it says here. Beverly had been killed by a drunk driver while living in Berlin in 1981. O'Barr began working on his comic The Crow as a mean of dealing with this personal tragedy. O'Barr was further inspired by a Detroit newspaper's account of the murder of a young couple for a $20 engagement ring. In The Crow, the protagonist, Eric, and his fiancee, Shelley, are murdered by a gang of criminals. Eric then returns from the dead, guided by a supernatural crow to hunt their killers. Um, After his discharge from the Marines, O'Barr continued his paintings and illustrations as well as doing various odd jobs, including working at a Detroit body shop. The Crow sat on the shelf for 7 years, but it later found a publisher with Gary Reed at Caliber Press. The first miniseries was published in 1989. The Crow has sold more than 750,000 copies worldwide. Now, when the first run of the comics came out, we were talking about this was a very low print run. We're talking about maybe close to 10,000 copies here. And then eventually, I think one of the higher print runs for a reprint was up to about 12,000 or so. Some of the other issues, there were 4 issues that were released under Caliber Comics. Some of them had anywhere from like 4 to 5,000 print run. So the print runs were relatively low, but I think what happened is the minute the book started going into reprints, I don't know how many prints they did of the Tundra releases, and then
Mm.
you also have the trade paperbacks, and then there were some special editions that that had come out since. So there are various ways you can find this particular book if you're interested in reading the actual Crow book. But I think the most accessible way of acquiring the Crow would be in the form of the trade paperback, which seems to be the way a lot of people have discovered the Crow.
Are those
And
still
that
in print?
uh, you would have to probably find an older printing, but I know that there are hardcover special editions uh, that I have. I have a special edition,
Oh yeah.
and that one is that one has come out. Uh, Said my brother. Okay, Richard says something. St. Louis. That's where he got his autographed, and then Chris Ambrose sent me some stuff here from Fangoria magazine 133. It's going through, I guess, tribute of stuff. They're talking to the effects artists, and I guess maybe some quotes from various actors and lots of photographs from The Crow. Um, so that was actually just for everybody that is on board with us. That is Fangoria 133. That would be an excellent resource to kind of look up. There have been numerous issues and books that have come out detailing specifically Brandon Lee and the tragedy that happened. Uh, it was very slim pickings finding things leading up to the Crow when the Crow
Yeah.
is actually being filmed, and that to me that is the very interesting part of this whole thing. We would find little blurbs like actor hired to do this, and then I remember one little tiny picture, and it was like from the mid chest up, and what it is, it was an early test photo of Brandon Lee in makeup, and that actually got printed, and that became the early picture of what the Crow looked like. It wasn't really a glorious photo. Unfortunately, we didn't see some of those photographs until after he had passed, and they ended up, uh, you know, appearing all over the magazines like Entertainment Weekly, photo sessions that they had ready for the movie. And it's unfortunate that we had to see these photos for the first time that way. But I guess that would be the next logical step. The comic book comes out. Um, we know that the movie's being made, and my brother's finally looking at this, I guess, looking over the shoulder of the Tundra books. I'm assuming that I have, but
Uh,
the next the next thing I think that comes out is that he dies, and the movie that was being made, we end up finding out that the actor has passed away. So there's really like we don't know if the movie's going to get completed at this point. Then they announce, I guess, in tribute to Brandon Lee, after I guess they brought all the people back to let's see what we can do to finish this film. But it wasn't just a simple thing. So I guess we lead into the film at this point, or do we talk about what came out before the film, or do we want to talk about a little bit behind the scenes of what we?
well, I mean, with James O'Barr, just to catch everybody up to speed, you've been saying that some of the comments from Richard,
Yeah,
um, our brother was able to go to a roundtable interview with James O'Barr leading up to the. Was it leading up to the film, or would the film
the
already come
film
out?
the film was about to come out, and they had a round table with James O'Barr from I don't know if it was Miramax or whoever it was gathering people. They flew them all to St. Louis to meet with O'Barr to have a Q&A. And at this place, I think they had promo soundtracks, posters, shirts, anything related, I guess, to the early Crow stuff. Yeah, early Crow T-shirts and all that kind of stuff. In regards to, he's there to promote. He's the creator. You don't have the director. I don't even know what happened to him. I don't even know if he was forthcoming, or they just decided let's just go with the creator of the comic, and let's have him do the PR at this time to get early word out. He also had, yeah, he had, my brother said he also had slides. This is a time when the internet was still kind of in its infancy, or even at all. But you ended up, you needed slides and all this kind of stuff, and you put them in your magazines or newspapers or whatever. So yeah, so Richard went to go do that. He got like autographed stuff and got to meet James O'Barr and part of the Q&A and all that kind of good stuff. But so we don't know how they finished this movie. We know that Brandon Lee was killed, and we don't know necessarily how the film was completed. We just know that it's
And
around
it
the
was a
corner.
while. It was a while before they announced that they were gonna, because we just thought, well, great, there it goes. That we're never gonna see this movie because they said they weren't done filming this, and we were like, how are they gonna do that? I remember
Right.
that because it was like almost for a while it was like, well, we would we would talk about the mythical adventures of what could have been with people, and I know we talked about this before, how it became like a bonding conversation with like people. If we're talking to someone like at a comic book store or something, and all of a sudden we talk about the Crow, and they're like, oh yeah, I know about that. They talk about the comic, then all of a sudden it was like we're kindred spirits, and like we would talk to that person for a while, just about just and it was the 90s. Okay, we had the angsty industrial Nine Inch Nail, just this whole little type of feel. And it's funny that and we talked about this before, how the comic the comic was actually in the 80s, yet it was like a 90, like it was kind of shown as like a 90s type thing. So I don't know, just at that time, I was a teenager, and it spoke to me, just because it was all, again, all feelings and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's just, so for a while, I just remember it was almost like a hopelessness, a hopeless feeling that we're never going to be able to see this. We saw all these cool pictures, and nothing's going to come of it. It's just going to, that's all we're going to have are those pictures. But
So they announced, now maybe if Richard's online, did the soundtrack, Richard, if you're there, speak to us, Richard. Let us know. No, no, Rich, did the soundtrack come out before the preview of the preview screening that we had? Well, that question we'll get to momentarily, but because I'm already hinting towards that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to this. That was the soundtrack. Soundtrack obviously is listed here as coming out in March 29, 1994. So it was 63 minutes long. That's actually pretty long of a uh, of a thing if you think about it. That's a pretty long soundtrack. So it says here March 29, 1994. This was the first imaging of some kind, and it was very reminiscent of the shirt, and that's the shirt, the preview. I remember seeing that symbol similar in the preview poster, I believe. And I kept thinking, well, okay, they're not going to use like actual picture. It's going to be that, and but in this soundtrack, it was a who's who of everybody that was, I guess, pretty popular at the time. We got, The Cure, Stone Temple Pilots, Nine Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine. You had throwbacks like Violent Femmes, Roland's band. Um, you had some newer bands like Machines of Loving Grace, Helmet. Uh, Pantera was, they were kind of in the metal scene as well, and then you had some of the other bands like My Life with Ruoko Cult, the Jesus and Mary Chain, and it was a mix of all these bands, but they were in that same wheelhouse, and it wasn't too outrageous, the soundtrack. It had its mood. It was very a moody performance type thing. According to this, in 1994, Billboard 200, it was number one. So
Wow.
yeah, so there was a lot of hype going into this album. All music scores rated pretty high as well. And this is all leading up to, by this time it's already been announced that The Crow has been completed, and the big question is, how is this movie completed? The actor didn't finish this, so how is it that you end up finishing a movie of sorts in that, without your lead actor? So they give us the soundtrack, so we're now all of a sudden playing detective and trying to figure out, where do these songs fit? Where is it going to go? How are they going to play out this thing? Because as far as we know, the story had to have been changed in some shape or form. We don't know how much it's going to have changed with the loss of the actor and stuff like that. The movie ends up coming out in. It's going to come out in May. I believe the movie will come out in May. Let me see what it says. May 13th, 94. Rich, do you recall when we actually saw this movie? We had to have seen it before May 13th. Did we see it when we were in May, or did we see it actually when it was April? Do you recall? Because we had the rare opportunity, the contacts Richard had made with him seeing Jameso'barr doing the interview. We were like in constant connection with them, to the point where we were actually doing it was a media project for Richard that ended up incorporating a high school in Gregory, Portland, and it included us at Delmar Foghorn at the time, and we were all drawing and writing and all this kind of stuff. Um, he says early at Cinema Six, yeah, but was it in April or May? Because the movie came out May 13th. Was it 2 weeks, or did we see it a month early? Did we see it, because the soundtrack came out in March 29. So was it already in April, or that early part of May that we saw the movie? Because the movie came out at least second or third week of May. I'm assuming it might have been the first week of May or the last week of April. But anyway, so Richard decides, if we're going to do this thing right and we want to put a review of the movie, let's acquire the film in some shape or form. Usually, these early preview screenings would have to drive to San Antonio, Austin, or Houston. That's where we would get press passes to go to see these films. According to Richard, it was 3 to 4 weeks before release. So in mid-April, we had already been hearing the soundtrack for at least a good 2 weeks. Then the bombshell drops. Guys, we're securing a early screening of The Crow, and we can't say anything about it. But we're going to go watch this so that we can review and put it in this publication and put it in the foghorn and all that kind of stuff in conjunction with the release of the movie. That right there is probably for any Crow fan, and we were Crow fans. We were more Brandon Lee fans and Bruce Lee fans. Leading up to this is probably like one of the emotional markers. This unknown movie that we never thought would get completed. We didn't know how they were going to finish it, and here we are. We're going to have a private, almost private press screening for us to watch away from a full packed house or whatever the case may be. And at that point, we still didn't know what was going to happen. You know, movies, these superhero movies didn't do terribly well. I mean, unless you were Batman, and then after that, none of the Batman movies after that I don't think were big successes. I don't think.
I mean, after Howard the Duck, I don't think anything ever kept up to that bar.
Yep. I remember I don't know if it was like right from the foghorn, we all took off over there, or we were to meet. I think Richard kind of corralled us there and said, hey, you, and we all kind of gathered, and then we all made our way to the movie theater in the he says Cinema 6. It wasn't Cinema 6. It was, I think, wasn't it the mall? I thought it was the mall in. Wait, I'm thinking about it right now. I think it's the mall. It was the movies in the mall, dude. Not the Dollar Cinema, but the ones that were in the Padre Mall. But anyway, we go in. We're excited as shit. The guy's excited too. I remember the manager being very excited that we were able to do this there. And the lights go down, and then it just says Brandon Lee, then The Crow, and then forget about it. It opens up, and it has that. You hear you're hearing that little sound, and then it opens up, and it almost appears like you're watching Blade Runner. That was the first impact that I had. I go, oh my God, they're basically taking Blade Runner, and then the fires, like the plumes of fire all around, and then we're brought into it. You're seeing the flashback, so you're seeing how they're playing out The Crow and this, that, and the other. But it's not until, I'm seeing, the next thing I do remember is that we're moving into the scenes where it's a year later. She drops the flowers off at the grave, and then was it Patrick Kelly? They were doing stuff. Yeah, Richard still insisted it was Cinema 6, but I don't think it was Cinema 6. I think the gated thing was lifted up, and I think we went under there and they lowered it down. But I don't know. If anybody remembers that screening of The Crow preview, it was the preview screening 3 to 4 weeks before the movie was released. We only had a handful of us go to this thing. I still say it was the mall. But anyway, and then the Sarah Monster, and they're eating Makes You Fart Big Time. I'm kind of like getting kind of antsy in my seat because we haven't really seen Brandon Lee in the film. We're seeing all these other characters leading up to, and I'm not really liking the girl at this point. The skateboarding shit, and Ernie Hudson's like, what the hell's on his face? This obviously is a fake mustache in these early scenes, because obviously these are reshot scenes to fit the new story. And then it happens, the pinball, and the thing blows up, and then let's go ahead and introduce the Brandon character, or is it the Brandon character? Whatever. He comes out. he moves the tombstone, the thing, and then he comes out of the ground, and the music's all creepy, and it's, and all that, and then it's that yell, and they tie that yell of his first breath, or whatever the case you want to call it, when he crawls out of the grave, and then he yells in pain, and he falls to the ground, but they match it with the music of that Ravel soundtrack, and that impact right there, just like, oh crap. The same impact that I had at the very beginning where we see the Brandon Lee the Crow, just that alone, that was like, already getting your eyes misty, that the fact we're actually watching that movie, and then now we're seeing Brandon Lee return from the grave. It's like he came back to be in this movie for us, and it's very calculated how these people put this movie together in that sense. But from that point on, we are taken into the world of the Crow that James O'Barr had established. And after watching it, a rewatching of The Crow last night, and reading the comic books again, all I can say is that is probably one of the most faithful adaptations from book to film, or film comparing to book. And I'm not saying it is, step by step. Obviously, there's more characters in the book, but to tell the simplicity of the story, and some of the pieces were changed, but they kept intact several scenes and pieces of dialogue.
The pawn shop.
The pawn shop is almost pulled right
Word
out of that.
for word.
Yeah, word for
I
word.
said we're closed. I heard it as I was looking over the comic again. I heard like he was the perfect Gideon, and now when I'm reading the comic, I hear, "Hey, I said we're closed." Just that.
Yep. You can it matches it. It's there's other scenes like when he's confronting Albright, even Albrecht.
Albright.
Yeah, but he's different. Yeah, it's different in there. The races are a little bit different, but the
Well,
interaction is very much the same. Yeah,
they combine
they
Hook.
combine characters.
They combined Hook and
Yeah,
Albert.
yeah. So they combine some characters and stuff like that. But you end up seeing that. But you know what? The Crow rang true from what the comic book was, even though the interaction was with different characters. And I've heard that was part Brandon, that he would read the book. He was reading the comics and wanted to reflect O'Barr's comic as closely as possible, in the sense of even using the lines. He probably was using the lines directly from that. I don't know if that was him on his own or whatever the case may be, but I
What they
think,
allowed him to do.
yeah, one quote was like, where else do you get to recite parts of the Raven dressed up like the way he was and all this? I mean, I think he was really flattered that he was able to do a character like this, because for the rest of his life, come on, let's admit it, if this movie tanked, he's doing Rapid Fire 2 and Big whatever Showdown, little
Laser Mission
whatever.
7 with Ernest Borgnine still.
Yeah, he's going to be doing action, karate action films, and all that probably for the rest of his life. And
Telling
it's
Dolph Lundgren he has never.
yeah.
The infamous line in Showdown in Little Tokyo. If you haven't seen it, watch it and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
I want to, and I pose this question to my brother, and I'd love to pose this question to everybody out there. But let's say that Brandon Lee did not get killed in the making of this film, and they kept the film more to what they originally wanted to do. And that's not that hard to find or to fathom, because I know David Chow and Alex Proyas and all these different people have said variations of the film and then how they were changed. Even Michael Berryman talking about how much of the Skull Cowboy was going to be integral to this film. Would this film have had the same impact as it did after the death of Brandon Lee? Would it have been just, it's like Blade, or you know what, it's not even like Blade, it wasn't even as popular? Would people have gone to this film? Would the film, I mean, as far as I know, they were piecing together a soundtrack that was, I mean, this soundtrack doesn't even have some of the bands, because if I'm not mistaken, they were making the soundtrack and some songs were cut due to what had happened to Brandon Lee, and they thought it was going to be in bad taste, that because of that, they just thought, yeah, we can't put that song in. I think Smashing Pumpkins was one of the bands, and then I know for a
Thank
fact
God.
that Stone Temple Pilots actually changed their song because of that. And I think there's a demo version of the song that they were actually going to use. What that is offhand, I please forgive me. I cannot. I do not remember what it was, but there were at least a couple of other bands that were supposed to be part of this soundtrack that they decided not to go with because of that. Chris Ambrose comments that the film would have not, it wouldn't have been as big, but it would have been a big film. You know what? It probably would have. I think it wouldn't have had the. Obviously, the budget was already controlled budget. I think it. You know what? I think it would have probably suffered special effect wise. Now we would have been going more practical instead of more digital because they did have to push the envelope with digital effects. And you got to admit, some of those digital effects are very rough. Like when he looks
But
at his
not back
hands.
then.
Well, but when he looks at his hands, come on, dude. When he looks the line,
Well, yeah, but I mean,
that's the weaker. That's the weaker of the effects.
but just like I told you, you know, in a movie that really didn't have that much special effects needed for it, it was very special effects laden just to put his face when he's standing there with a crow on his, and they superimposed his face because at that time, I mean, look at now, you know, imagine doing like they could honestly just remake the crow and like, I mean, if they're able to make Kurt Russell look like young Kurt
Yeah,
Russell and all this other stuff, they could pretty much just
they could insert Brandon
redo.
Lee if they wanted to.
That's what I'm saying. They could redo the Crow with Brandon Lee, and somehow Ernie Hudson looked younger now than when he did in Ghostbusters. So
Yeah. No, and that's the creepy part. I know that Alex Proyas, the original director of this movie, has been very adamant about that. He does not want to. He's been fighting for not to do a reboot. Um, and I think he has a case. You know, he wants people to see a director's cut of his version. What I find fascinating, and I think out of respect for Linda Lee Caldwell and the family, at the time of Brandon's passing and then the court trial and all that kind of stuff, the case, she had a request and then she got to see the film and then really did not want to see Brandon.
shot.
Yeah, he gets shot in the movie, but I guess
No,
she
no,
did,
but
there's
there
a
was
certain there's a certain way she didn't want to see him played on the big screen. But you know what? When you get the DVDs and the Blu-rays, all those extra scenes are on there, and you get to see all of those scenes that were originally cut. And I think it'd be awesome to see, Alex get a shot, put some of those things back with the technology that's available. They could finish those cowboy scenes. This movie could be. I think the film would be better.
and they could digitally take out Ernie Hudson's mustache.
Yeah, put
HBO
a
Max.
Superman cape on him.
Yeah,
We didn't need the
but
crow.
no, and that like I said though, the technology now. I think if he would have stayed in there, it still would have been a movie that we liked. See, and I think that's the dip because I know we had a bad taste in our mouth whenever all these people wanted to watch The Crow because, oh, that's the movie that, and some people, they're like, oh, that's the movie he died in, and they honestly believed that they were gonna like keep that scene in there,
Right.
like they were expecting that we're gonna get to see in the
So,
movie.
to this day, people think that scene is still in that film.
Yeah, and if I recall, after she watched the footage, didn't they destroy the footage?
In the courtroom. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
in the chambers.
because they said that they did not want that
Twilight Zone.
because and I was talking to my wife about this, Jess. I was like, it wasn't the internet back then, but we know that would have gotten out.
Oh, it would have been on what is it? Traces of Death and all that, like those
Yeah.
videotapes.
So I mean, and it was like, it was one of those things where they were not nobody. They were so close to Brandon, and it was Brandon's. It was his Enter the Dragon. That was his movie. It wasn't, Rapid Fire had come out, but it wasn't, I mean, Rapid Fire, that could be anybody. Brandon Lee tried to be the Crow, like from reading the comic, and that's why he had the comic, like we learned about that he would, he wanted that brought to life. And you rarely see that, where sometimes you have people who are like, oh, well, I didn't even really read the comic or do this because I wanted to. He like he didn't. His interpretation wanted to bring James O'Barr's vision to life. Like, he connected with that story, like the emotion in it, and tried to make it. That was going to be his movie. That and you're right. That would have been his make or break if he was gonna. And again, we'll never know. And so I mean, I don't, of course, don't dwell on it that much, but there's still that thought, like, would he, but the same could be said about Bruce Lee, you know and that was a comparison people were doing. Oh, well, Game of Death. Oh, and now the
Yeah,
Crow.
yeah,
And then the dragon came out, and if you remember, we saw the dragon, and there was that scene where Bruce Lee supposedly broke the curse by destroying that demon. He's telling Brandon, run. And then they, before they released the movie, they had to go back in and put in memory of Brandon Lee, in loving memory
yeah,
of Brandon. And it's like, that movie became more emotional. And again, we're Bruce Lee fans,
yeah,
but
yeah,
because of that little scene at the end, it's like,
yeah.
thanks a lot, Bruce. You didn't do it. No,
Yeah. Give it a little
but
bit more.
again, so they tried, and I wouldn't say the director or anything like that, but of course the movie company people are tried to build off of that comparison, that parallel with his father, the curse. And so a lot of people wanted to watch The Crow because of that. And sometimes we would get a little upset, mainly because it wasn't that we liked Brandon Lee, we liked Bruce Lee, so of course, Brandon Lee, you could start seeing he was building up in Rapid Fire. I think it was right before. That was like the movie he made right before this. So that movie was awesome, and it was just getting. He was finally getting out of the sidekick role from Showdown Little Tokyo, and slowly moving up into an action star. And this movie, I think, just again, at that time, to see a movie that dark, that, I mean, you and I actually mean dark. Like, there's not a lot of movies that are just that, like, you know dark. Just every you could,
Yeah.
but the white and I think that's why they did it, because that white contrasted, and it was just like boom. You know, uh,
Richard says something about what about B-roll, and this is, I guess, referring to, I guess, when the death scene, and then Chris Embry says wasn't the scene where he arrived at home and was shot by Funboy. That they actually had to reshoot that, and
yeah,
because originally he opens the door
he's
and
holding groceries.
Funboy turns around and shoots him while he's holding the groceries. If you recall the new version, Tintin throws a knife at him, and that's what sends him going to the ground. And then he's
Did
pulls
something.
the knife out of his chest, and when that happens, you know, then they pull him up, and then they hold him up, and then they two guys pull the guns. So it's not just one guy holding a gun; it's actually two guys. Uh, I guess shoot him, and then they throw him out the window. I'm assuming. See, the other creepy scene is the death mask that is used in that. They actually use that mask again to have the other actor wear. That was the double for him in some scenes, and in some scenes they would have some computer animation played over that. One of the most expensive scenes. What do you think? What the most expensive scene in the movie? You get one guess, and then we'll jump into it because that way you'll be guessing forever. But just think about the movie.
He breaks the mirror,
Yep,
and they have to show all the.
that was the most expensive shot in the entire film.
And they
Where
reused footage when when it was raining, and he was like,
yeah, he's walking into the house like that, and then he walks again in the alley that way. You know what? If you it's the scenes play out longer where okay he's supposed to actually go to the pinball after it explodes He just became he's back from the dead. He's supposed to run into that woman. There was a woman that was cut out of that scene that was tied up in the pinball arcade, and she stumbles out, I guess, on fire or whatever, and the crow catches her, or Brandon Lee's character catches her, and that's his first glimpse of the villains that he had interacted with.
Because
But
he touches
because
them.
right, because the way they've reshuffled the storyline, they wanted him on his journey, and then the minute he went into the house is when he got all those impressions of the villains that he had to chase. They didn't want to see another person, going into that mode. So that was kind of a different way that they kind of played that one out. But those scenes, they're there. They're Brandon interacting, and to me, the thing is that the sad part is when you're taking scenes that he was actually in and putting scenes that are not him to fill in this other story. So there's so much of this other stuff that's on the cutting room floor.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, that's the travesty of this whole thing. We don't get
Well,
to
I
see
remember
all
we
of
didn't
his
find out about
stuff.
the Skull Cowboy till like way later on, right? If I
No, no, no.
recall.
Well, okay.
No,
Remember,
the first picture.
well, there was an interactive. It was an interactive DVD of The Crow. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
recall this thing, and they actually had a QuickTime movie in the computer that you downloaded and played, and it was the actual clip of the Skull Cowboy. So,
Okay, I was trying to
but
remember that because
but 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 Michael Berryman was already saying that his character was cut. Skull Cowboy. I remember hearing that he was cast as the Skull Cowboy. We didn't know what the hell was going to happen, but the minute that there was no Skull Cowboy, I was like, wow, they didn't use the Skull Cowboy. Of course, they didn't have a talking bird. I I don't think they could have got away with that part, but that's a whole. There's a whole different vibe going here with that, and I think that's, to me, those are the issues that. Okay, he's a rock star in this version of The Crow. They didn't really establish him being any kind of rock star. He was just a regular guy in the
now I wonder
comic books.
if he was alive, were they going to show him shoot up morphine?
See, that's another thing, because that was another thing of that character. The other thing was the self abuse that.
Mm-hmm.
See, the way that they were going to get around that part that I do know of is the fact that he has a fight with Funboy that was actually cut entirely out, but Funboy gets the straight razor from the bathroom floor.
Yeah.
And the scene is there because I remember seeing it, and he's holding the syringe right there at the doorway.
Show it.
And
He's all.
and you have all the okay, this is the way it looked. Okay, here it goes. Wait, okay. Wait, where's my hand? Okay. It's like this.
Yeah.
He's going.
Yep, that's like.
He's holding it like that with all this space behind him, and then it cuts away, and you're like, "What the hell is all that big?"
Show the straight razor on the sink.
Yeah.
They show it on the sink, and then all of a sudden, in every movie, whenever there's this much room,
he's coming. Like, he's coming. Yeah.
You're gonna see the.
And sure enough, eventually in the special edition box set with 2 unnamed other movies that for some reason they packaged some bootleg movies in there, that you get to see all these extra clips, and you see that entire fight play out, and that's why you see the big cut in the back of his jacket, and you're like, well, wait a minute, where did he get that big cut? Why does he have all these electrical tape all on his hands? Because that was the battle that he had with Funboy.
And don't they later explain? They're like, oh, it's because you were trying to help the girl. Like, oh, that's what happened. Well, I mean, there's an iconic poster that we have where he's like that.
Okay,
and you see all the electrical tape.
But okay, Chris poses an interesting thing. So if the Crow has these regeneration powers, why all of a sudden is he weak? Okay. This is why. This goes into Skull Cowboy. He doesn't realize the powers that he have, that every time he exerts power to save people, or in the case of Darla, which is Sarah's mom, he interacts with her and drains the morphine out of her body. That interaction actually weakens the Crow and makes him vulnerable. He doesn't know that at that time. So when he gets sliced from the back and then he starts getting attacked on the arms. His healing power is a lot slower, and then he overtakes Fun Boy and eventually sticks him with all the morphine in the chest, allowing
because
him time. Yeah.
that's the whole point of it is the crow. Well, they probably changed it, but the whole point of the crow was to bring him back just to avenge himself or revenge himself. I don't know how that.
Avenge.
No, but it's himself, or is he avenging?
No, he's specifically doing it for the girl.
Okay.
His death was irrelevant.
Inconsequential.
Remember, they were dead when they touched her. They were already dead when they touched her. I think that's what he said. So,
yes.
So that is a flaw in the story when you remove the Skull Cowboy who gives those instructions, because they had to tie in the bird in a different way, and basically the bird was the secret to the power, which you have this stupid conversation. The key to the crow is the bird, and blah 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 blah, to kill the bird, and you get.
I'm pretty
I didn't
sure
they
like hired her just for that whole situation.
Yeah.
They hired her and said, you know what, let's get some. Never mind.
Well, you know what? They said that Brandon Lee was very instrumental in removing some very unsensitive Asian material from the script.
And so they added it right back in when he.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's dead. Let's put it back in there. Yeah.
I like the pretty lights. Asian. She became an ornament. She became an ornament.
She did. She did.
She was
all the mysticism, all of that, whatever, got thrown out the window again. She was just.
He might have said, "Yeah, might as well get some Calgon, take him away." You know,
yeah.
Ancient Chinese secret. It's, I mean, you know, something Bruce Lee fought all his life, and Brandon tried to continue it on just to have that brought back in after he died. I'm serious. I'm pretty sure they brought that back in, or they
you know what it was? This is what probably happened. Well, we got to put it somehow back in. The mystical stuff is got to have to be ancient, from the Oriental ancient mysticism and all this whatever, and that's probably what they ended up doing. And the thing is that because we're going to remove Skull Cowboy and we're going to move all this other stuff, well, then we have to have a different way. We're going to put all this money into the special effects of Brandon Lee. We can't afford to finish all the special effects with Michael Berryman and the Skull Cowboy stuff. That's. Then
they have the Beauty and the Beast scene up top when they're fighting. The Gaston and Beast.
Yeah. So let's have three moments. Was it three? Okay, there's Brandon falling out the window, and then we have
the makeup,
and then we have Skank. Skank's dead, and he falls out the window, and then who they're battling on the top of the roof, and then him. Three reused shots, dude. I didn't like that part either.
I have to tell you, rereading the comic, I'm really glad that Skank got his head chopped off because of what and not like. Oh. I you know what? That totally. There's some big old personal reasons why now that in the comic, that scene just like. Jameso'barr was like, I'm going to make sure every one of these guys deserves to die. And the scene where Tom and Skank die, it's a little bit closer now to me. And, man, I was reading it. I'm like, wait, did I? Like, it didn't even hit until I'm rereading it again. And then they even say it. And I'm just like, and then I reread that scene like 5 times just today. I don't know. Okay. I'll move on from that.
And the thing is, I recommend if you have not seen the trade paperback in any form, pick up a copy of this thing. By now it's in a hardback edition. I have my hardback right over here. You can get these off of Amazon, eBay, or whatever, and they're like anywhere between $15-$20, and it is an amazing collection of art and story, and it's not your regular comic book. I'm going to tell you this, that these pages by themselves, there's some pages that you're just looking at the artwork going, wait a minute, what is this, a dream sequence? And
Well,
it's very
uh,
different. It's a very
if I
very different
recall,
read.
James O'Barr was self-taught.
Yep, that's what
He
I
was
heard.
self-taught, and you
Yep.
can see that. Um, it in a way it kind of lent itself to the moods that he would, because every almost every shot with him and his wife in the flashbacks in the comic are very light. The
Hmm.
lighting, it's very just, and then all of a sudden you just switch over and it's just like the darkness.
Could you
The
imagine
printer was
having to
probably
have?
like,
Could you imagine having to color that?
that's well,
Ink?
that's what I'm
That's not
saying. The
computers,
printer's
man.
like,
There's no computers in that thing, man. That's not computer artwork, man. That's dark ass pictures.
but again, so you get, and see, this is one thing that I think kind of spoke to me, being a very poor artist, is that you have this style right here. You
Hmm.
see him, and then,
Oh, you're gonna show one of those crazy weird crow
well, I
faces.
mean, it's just like, you get like, oh man, look at that. That's just like a lot of the artwork's just like
Yeah,
intricate, and then all of a sudden, I'm pretty sure there's a panel with stick figures. You know, you just
yeah.
it's hard. I mean, like the style. Like, I'm gonna tell you what. Whenever you see a picture of Eric like alive, he it's like, I don't know. Yeah, well, but I'm saying, like,
It's
you
a
see
different.
him
It's
and
Balky from
yeah,
Perfect Strangers.
Bronson Pinchot, and then you get the Cure. You
Ian
know,
Curtis and Iggy Pop and all these other dudes, and
I mean, isn't that pretty much who he? I mean,
yeah,
isn't that
yeah,
Iggy Pop right there?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You get like, but a lot of it, he didn't draw this in.
But you
I
know what?
mean,
Think about it. Think about it. If you grabbed one of your kids' books, obviously they're not drawing this, but you see the different styles that they kind of go through. Except he decided he's going to connect some of this with stories, and yeah, yeah, exactly, right there.
that's what I'm
Look at
saying is
look at
that,
the face up there on that one compared to the goofy face that you showed on the other character.
yeah, and then sometimes you kind of wonder, why is the crow like standing really pretty, like, sometimes, you know calm down. Well, I mean, well, see, that to me, that's a Cure picture. That right there is like the Cure.
Right.
But then you have,
The ballet
well,
stuff. Yeah.
then you have then you have that, the Susie and the Banshee part.
Right.
But a lot of it is the mood, and he didn't, when he drew this comic, I'm pretty sure 7 years later, when it was actually printed, he had to go back and redraw, or they're probably like, the stick figure just needs, it's just like,
Well, actually, I don't know what kind of editors they had in position for this. I don't know what they did. These were all independent going through Caliber. The whole series didn't even get finished. It wasn't until the trade paperback came out that they put that fifth book in there.
yeah, they're like,
I've never opened. Unfortunately,
he's all, this is, they're like, you might need to redraw this one. He's like, but my feelings, and they're like, okay, fine, I'm gonna draw that. Okay, well, there you go.
yeah, yeah. Because this thing ran. By the time he did the trade paperback, he was drawing the rest of the series. There's one page. It's like all black, but the captions, you notice that they're like in a box. It's like they just
Yeah,
pasted it there when they went to print. And dude, I haven't even opened those comics.
and it's like, okay,
The original Caliber that I have. I've never opened those four, and the reason being is because, and it's newspaper print. Could
yep.
you imagine this in newspaper print, dude?
So, like, in one picture, you have Eric Draven like hey guys, and
Dude,
then all of a sudden,
go to Real. If RealmCon happens, you go tell him, no, I don't want that version. Could you draw the other version of Eric Draven for me?
I want the alive where he's shaving. I want the
Yeah, I want that version. The John Hughes.
no. It reminds me of Jim Carrey in Ace Ventura when he gets the autograph and he's all. That's the
Yeah,
Eric Draven I want. I want his alive. I want his happiness. I don't want
yeah.
his.
I want the pre version before he became the Crow version book. I want that book.
Jameso'barr. I want a picture of you before. Never mind. That's messed up. I want it in 80. I want before Berlin. I want happy J O Bar.
You know, it'd be interesting. Has anybody ever found one of these manuals, these instruction manuals or whatever that he was drawing in the military? I'm wondering because he was doing military manuals. I mean,
I know, but I'm pretty sure there were like the survival ones where they're like, drink your canteen. And then meanwhile they're like, don't do this.
you know what? He was drawing the weapons. That's why he's able to draw every little
Oh yeah.
wording. Python 357, your shells. He was
Oh, and one thing I noticed, what every comic person does, the little shout out. So to me, this goes into play of he was the glass company. I don't know if you saw this. The glass company, Eisner Glass.
okay. All right.
So the shout out to Will Eisner. Most people, and that's the thing, and that's what I was doing. I was going through the comic, looking at what's written in the background, because you see that now. A lot of comic artists. I mean, they used to be Easter eggs back in the day, but most comic, like honestly, every comic now you'll see something with the last names of Kirby. Even in that new movie Scoob, that Messick Mountain, like all of the names of the people who played the characters, they're somewhere in the show or the movie, and they do that in comics too. You'll see people go on Kirby Drive. Like Kirby is usually a store name or a street name somewhere in their comic to pay homage to the people who. And I'm thinking the spirit, like Will Eisner, he had that
Yeah.
that he probably remembers
There
that,
were
and that
there were some other things. I mean, he was influenced in some way by classic cartoons, comic book drawings and stuff like that. But as far as a formal education, he does not have that. He does know how to draw. Obviously, his skills were working on his own. And what I remember hearing him is that he would bleed on the page. That's what it was. It was all cathartic for him. Okay.
you look at that picture when he's
Yeah.
slicing up Tom
Yeah.
Tom,
Yeah.
and that his eye is extremely bigger than it should be.
Yeah.
And I feel, but again, I'm not dogging this because look at my comic.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, but to me, it's like each page is a different style because he has no style, because this was feeling. This was all emotion.
Yep.
And it was funny because I was just thinking, we're talking about all this stuff that's not in the movie, and I'm thinking most of the people that I know of who have watched this movie don't even know it's a comic book. So they just watch the movie and that's all. They're just like, oh man, it's great. And I'm like, but they're missing. And then, and that's why I'm actually afraid. I was afraid of this Crow one because I'm thinking if we're not too careful, like we can go on to like 5 and I can't.
No, I know. No, I know. I know.
But I just think about and that's the problem with us.
We can always revisit. Hey, you know what? We're going to do book 1. We're gonna
Yeah.
do, because
And
that
we'll
is
go panel by panel and talk
that.
about.
This is how impactful that this book was. Regardless of it being rough, you know what? Am I wrong? This is inspiring. That tells and gives you. I can do this as well. I can tell my story, and not be, I don't have to be perfect and not be able to. That's one thing that I read about this book. Sometimes I would have to go back and go, wait a minute, let me read this again. Did I miss something? Because it would go certain style, flashback in a totally different style. And then you end up coming back here and you're like, wait a minute, is this the same woman? Wait a minute, is this the same guy? Is this the same crow? Is this,
So
what's going
and
on
so
here?
because of that, you would think I would like Rob Liefeld, but I don't. So that's like you know what? I'm gonna do a comic book, and it's gonna go from looking like the Wizard of Id, go to Rob Liefeld, then to Leonardo da Vinci, then do a messed up McFarlane, and then stick figures, and everything's gonna be different. Every page, it's like, honestly, this is almost like, oh, I got 17 different artists to do a comic. No, it's just one.
Just one.
It's just one.
Is there any other book, just for shits and giggles? Is there something else that is out there that is as beloved that has something like this in a collection where the artwork just goes pretty much?
I think if this was any other book, any other story, this wouldn't have flown. I think what the reason, okay, and again, this goes back to, like, okay, I don't like Liefeld, but I give this a pass because, again, he wrote this because his wife or his fiance, she died, drunk driver.
Hmm?
And instead of like killing himself because of being distraught, he
Put it on.
he
Yeah, he put it on the
put it on
pages.
paper. And so when you see those pictures, it's almost like those feelings of loss are his feeling, not Eric's, but those are his feelings. Like, he misses, like, and I think this is his diary, in a way, in a sense. Many people, and that's why sometimes you get, you hear the thing about, oh, well, violence, and, oh, there's too much violence. Well, this was therapeutic for him, because instead of going out and finding that drunk driver and killing that person, he put it down in paper. Like, oh my gosh, if I could, this is what I would do. And to me, this is his look into his psyche, his grieving process. And so sometimes he's like telling his story, but then there's those pictures where he's like, and it's just like his emotions going through his hand, getting those feelings out. And other times it's like, nah, I'm just shooting this guy in the head, But, and I think that's why, to me, I give him a pass with the different art styles and the different storytelling, because I'll tell you what, the one thing that was, you read in the comic again, you look at the thing, I mean, he just sounded like a crazy serial killer. I mean, the stuff that he's,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
If he doesn't have this book, dude, this dude's going out and he's gonna go shoot people up, dude.
I mean, there's this part where he's like, I feel it on the molecular level. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I mean, and over here he's like cutting digits off of people and making them eat them. I don't. It's like, Mr. Jones, are there spots in a leopard's eye, sir? Or also, I mean, it's like, he just goes around, and there's even a part where, like, should we kill him? They're like, no, just let him ramble on for a little bit. He's like, hey, they threw in the nails,
Mm-hmm.
putting the nails on the thing, but it was a different scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there was a lot of craziness, but the way Brandon portrayed it, where he's like, stop me if you heard this, it was almost like, I'm gonna have fun killing you. But in this comic, it's just like, this is blind. I know who I have to kill. I'm crazy, and you're gonna die. And again, in the comic, he's keeping a vial of morphine and pretty much shooting up the whole thing before he goes in. So it's like, where does that play in? Like that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that isn't in here, or like even explanation.
Right.
Okay, why did he have to? He was self mutilating himself, yet he still felt like he needed to take morphine to
Yeah.
go in and kill. And so again, that's I don't know. Again, I don't know if that was a metaphor, something that was above. Again, if he wrote this in like the '80s, this was not the storytelling of the '80s.
Right.
This comic, even when this came out in Caliber, you didn't see this kind of storytelling back then. And again, this you usually had superheroes,
Right. Right. Right.
and then so
But then
again,
again, they did say the roots of most of this were like in '81 and stuff
yeah.
like that. So the punk movement was definitely pretty strong going at that time. This guy goes off to the military. I don't recall any major wars happening in the early '80s unless he went to the Falkland Islands or something like that. But anyway,
But he was in Berlin. Okay,
yeah,
this is still when there was
the wall.
East and West.
Yeah, so you got
Yeah.
to see that duality type thing and the
Well, I'm saying there
imagery.
was a possibility of. I mean, that's like being stationed, in Korea by the South Korea, North Korea,
Right, right, right.
and I mean when tensions were really high.
Hmm.
So I mean, you had people who were trying to cross the wall getting shot. I mean, so there was that tense feeling of just everything going on, and then for that to happen,
Right.
you know,
Um, yeah, definitely we can go on and on. We went from the comic book into the movie, parallels to the comic book, and then we're basically talking about the textures and everything and styles of the comic book. The comic book is really the comparison of everything. The fact that the soundtrack doesn't necessarily reflect the comic book in any shape or form, but it does enhance or is a really good companion to the movie and the time and place.
oh yeah,
That crow is a different crow from the crow in the comic book. The comic book is definitely this 80s to late 80s character. And then,
well,
well, you know what? Maybe even earlier than that because there's dudes that look like they're from the Warriors.
yeah, Tintin.
Yeah, yeah.
He's got the afro and
The
and
bandana and all, whatever the thing.
so honestly, it's like reading this, and we were talking about this the other night. Um, this soundtrack for this, if they did the movie when it took place in the '80s, you would see the Bauhaus, the Susie and the Banshees, the Cure, Joy Division, you know, stuff like that. I mean,
And
right
that
off the
music and that music is very somber. It's very atmospheric. It's very and we're not talking about the dancey songs that you normally would see of those bands. It's not the dancey songs. It's the droning, just those depressing songs that had to
well,
be the soundtrack when he was drawing this stuff. It
well,
had
see,
to have been.
in the comic, they just do the whole lyrics
Yep.
of the Hanging Garden,
Yeah.
and I mean, just I picture that song, just the bass, the doom, and you know, I think in some of the songs for the soundtrack, they had that
The spirit.
that that feel. That I mean, just for the fact that he got the Cure to, the Cure played, they wrote a song for this movie. It
Right.
wasn't, hey, we're going to use one of their old songs. They wrote a song, and to me, it's just like, I don't know.
I,
There's
I
certain, like,
I honestly thought they were going to actually have these bands when they announced the kind of bands that were, I guess, going to appear in this thing. I actually thought we were
oh,
because when they mentioned what happened.
hello,
I'm here. Hello, hello. Maybe you'll catch on in a second. But when they were picking a lot of these bands, or these bands were part of the soundtrack, I thought they were actually going to be playing old songs. There was going to be older tracks, or they were going to be remakes of older songs. Because I know the Nine Inch Nails, they went full blown recreating a song. They recreated Dead Souls, and so I thought, I was just saying, I thought the whole soundtrack was going to be remakes. I thought it was going
Oh,
to be people playing like what Nine Inch Nails did. I thought it was going to be one of those kind of things, and they played Dead Souls. I thought
well,
a
they
lot
really
of these
couldn't get Joy
bands,
Division to do it.
yeah, yeah,
But and see, I think and I think that's why I think they had him because um, there's even a part in the comic where it says Dead Souls,
hmm
and so I think like I think he asked them, or he probably said, "I need this song in there," and they said, "Who can do it? Let's look it for a band now," and they probably picked Nine Inch Nails. They had that feel, you know, um,
Well, yeah, I mean,
and
they were picking bands that were at that time, you know, the more modern, and you got to get that. You have to get that young crowd into your movie. You can't just fill it up with old songs that you're hoping that these people are gonna like that. I mean, you had to get Rage Against the Machine, Helmet, those type of, some of those type bands,
let me ask you a question because
Pantera.
I tried to I tried to watch The Crow. It's no longer streaming anywhere. Um,
Yeah, you don't own
and
a copy?
I do on my computer,
Oh, okay.
but it was off, and I was like gonna watch it as I was falling asleep. Um, do they do the casings in the hair?
He does in some scenes, and I remember why they did not do it fully throughout the film. In early filming, they would tie the bullet casings on, and what would happen is that when he would like do his head like that, because they are in the scene where actually he's gunning
That's what
down
I
everything.
thought I saw. Yeah,
He has them in
but
there, but what was happening? They were hitting his teeth. They would whip his teeth, and they were like almost chipping his teeth. So they decided we're not going to do that. But that you do see that occasionally. It's a whole thing in the actual comic book where he's actually,
yeah,
for every person, he's supposed to tie a casing on it in his hair. They they
right.
they were following the comic book. Do you recognize this? And he pulled it off of another cat. The trophies. The
Yeah, but
trophies.
see, and that's the thing
He had,
though.
yeah.
In the movie, he killed him by stabbing him. He didn't even shoot Tintin.
Right. But see, yeah, he had what? He had an axe. He had
He didn't because
his
he didn't take the
his
jacket from
jacket.
Tintin.
Right. But what I get, okay, but the way he killed the different people, he had guns, he had the drugs. He had at one point, he says, talking to Gabriel about the Seven Samurai. He ended up with a sword somewhere, and then um, what do you have? An axe, or an axe of some kind, and
Yeah,
then I don't know. He used all kind of ways. This dude was like, uh, okay, how about this? They're doing the Crow, and he's basically like Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers. That's what I think, that they were probably a different version, because they none of these dudes talked, only Freddy Krueger. But then we're gonna play this character up. That's what my fear is, and I think if anybody's fighting that, it's Brandon Lee, and he's got to put that smart ass talking all these things, because the minute you have that, all you're doing is recreating Halloween and all this, hunting down all these bad dudes. So you're like part Batman and Michael Myers, killing all these people. Because I think at one time in the comic book, they call him the Shape, and that's what Halloween was. I think the character's known as the Shape. Chris Embreeze. I think he's known as the Shape, right? Or what do they call the Halloween guy? They refer to him as, or at least the actor, they refer to him as that. They don't call him Michael Myers. They don't. They don't. They don't refer to him as that.
you're
And,
the Duke. Oh
and
wait,
that's actually like a throwback to the I want to say like Frankenstein. They didn't call him Frankenstein's monster. I think they called him what, question mark or whatever, the creature, or I don't know. They called him something else. They didn't call him Frankenstein's monster. They called him something else, and I think that's
The creature.
an ode to Frankenstein. And then Michael Meyer, they called him Shape, and then he's referred. There's several things that hint at different things in this, and that's what I think is really cool about The Crow. Um, so then we've talked about the movie, the impact of the movie. Had a strong impact on movies that were coming out next. It proved to be a success, even with the death of an actor. That we started seeing more comic book movies being made as a result of this, along with the regular batch of comic book movies. But still, even then, it's still not enough for Hollywood to admit that that's the next thing that needs to be done. I think everybody's still a little gun shy about. Is it fluky? Is it because the guy died? You do get a little bubbling of some other comic book type movies, but for every Crow and for every Batman, you end up with a Daredevil and Ghost Rider and all this other garbage. So yeah. So what ends up coming next? Obviously, a movie succeeds, you have a sequel, and in some people's eyes, the
I don't think they'll ever make. I mean, another Crow movie. I think after they made that one, they just stopped.
it broke the mold. That was it. No more Crow movies. For sake of argument,
I don't know if they'll ever try to make a sequel.
in an alternate universe, let's say there were 3 sequels and a TV show made. But
I don't
anyway,
think.
they did not live up to whatever the thing is. I watched Salvation. Dude, what ends up happening, they do the whole breaking of the glass scene. He sees himself in the mirror and he breaks the mirror. And then what is the scene the Crow does when he's at the top of a building and he wants to get down? They play the same scene out. Yep. Face
The
forward
Assassin's
dive.
Creed. The Assassin's Creed.
So yeah, they really didn't get, let's play these scenes, and of course it happens to be another, it's like Enter Spider-Man, and he's trying to have some smart ass lines as well, like these one liners. And
I think what you said. It's like they weren't trying to make a sequel to The Crow. They're trying to make a sequel to Brandon Lee. They're trying to do.
yep.
They're trying to do a retelling, but I mean, I know there was actually other Crow comics. I mean, there's still Crow comics going on, and I remember after that, jameso'barr did another Crow or something like that, like with a Aaron Craven or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
and it's going to be like that. You're always going to have remakes. I think the last time that this remake was going to support like a remake of the actual Eric Draven Crow, I think Jason Momoa was
Yep.
linked to it, which
Yeah. And he even had makeup, like right when they basically were told that this film was not going to happen, they went ahead and put him in the makeup or whatever and gave it like a little hint, like, well, this is what it would have looked like, and that was about it. I think maybe that's why it just didn't get.
well, I mean, if you remember, for the longest time, the person who was supposed to play Bloodshot was the Green Ranger. What's his name?
Oh,
Tommy.
yeah,
I know it's not his real name, but
yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's like there was even pictures. There was even, I think, that small trailer of Ninjak versus the Valiant Universe,
Right.
and
Yeah.
he was Bloodshot, and then all of a sudden Vin Diesel, and we're like, what?
Chris Ambrose mentions that in City of Angels promo, the character's name, I think it said Michael Corvin, but
Yeah,
it ended up being Ash or something of that nature.
Corvid, like the bird.
But so okay, so a bunch of sequels, and then
His name was Vincent Perez, right?
Vincent Perez or
Isn't he
Perez.
French?
Yeah, but I think he also said my name is Vincent Perez. Anyway, um, so they weren't successful. Jeff Most, I'm assuming, is still the producer of this, along with Edward Pressman. They have been trying to figure out a way to get this thing rebooted. They still haven't found the right chemistry. Rob Zombie at one time was attached to this project. There have been so many different people attached to The Crow in some way to reboot it, resurrect it, put it in the future, make their own version of it or something.
2099.
Yeah, something like that. I forgot what it was like. Just some fantastical version. But the only thing I could think of is if somebody was to try to go to the original source material. Why? I don't know. Why don't they try an animated version of it? I don't. If you don't. Yeah, I don't know. That might not work either. You know what? It's going to be like Speed Racer. It's going to be one of these things that are just kind of. It's just weird. And it happens to be something that Rob likes, and it's just because I've seen some really weird Speed Racer like comic books. Even the original comic book that was not the manga is like weird looking. The now comics have like these weird interpretations of Speed Racer and Trixie based on the artists that they were using and stuff. So
It's like we want it to look like anime and manga, but not. So
yeah.
kind of.
I personally thought it would have been cool to see, like what movie really captured the spirit of what I thought should have been Speed Racer was the Incredibles 2. When I saw that and all the gadgets in the freaking car, I was like, this is what the Crow, not the Crow, this is what Speed Racer should be like. Speaking on that part, actors originally chose, or they were wanting to get to play the Crow. Jameso'barr wanted Johnny Depp. That's who he saw as playing the Crow. And then I think the producers, I think they had somebody else in mind. It was Charlie Sexton. They wanted Charlie Sexton, and they wanted a musician, actual music. Oh, Michael Jackson. Those two were in the running at one time.
And good luck with getting Johnny Depp. He's pretty picky at what he was doing at that time.
Yeah,
He would have had to be filming Crybaby, I think, at that time.
I think they vetoed him, saying Johnny Depp could not pull this off. There's no way he could be a freaky character of this nature at all. So they probably vetoed what's his name, Jameso'barr, right off the bat.
He went on to do Crybaby.
Yeah, he wasn't going to do that, and then he went off to do Ed Wood as well. So beyond where do you? I mean, other than obviously they're still doing comic books. Do you think we'll ever see a Crow reboot of some kind, a formal Crow reboot in the next 5 years?
Not the next 5 years, but it will come. It's I remember.
Barr's 60 plus years old, I think.
So the year after he dies, that they will make
somebody will come out with it.
The Amazon original.
The Crow miniseries.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, you see The Boys, you see stuff like that. You know what? I will say that. I think that's how it would have to be remade. Not into one movie.
Not into 1.5 hour, 2 hour movie. A series.
A mini-series, a 4-episode, it needs to be. And that's why I kind of dig a lot of the stuff they're doing with the mini-series and stuff like that. There's some things, because you can't invest your feelings in a movie. So when we watched the movie, we knew about it.
Yep.
Other people that were watching it just thought it was a good flick. And they wanted to see it because, the actor died in it.
The novelty. There was a novelty to it.
Still not even Brandon Lee, just Bruce Lee's kid. And I think that's the only way that they're going to be able to do a proper Crow story, is to give it the time to cultivate. And if it's doing each book as an episode, so you get that whole feeling. It's not like, well, let's cram this in an hour and a half or 2 hours. It's okay. Book one is an hour and a half, book two or an hour, 45 minutes, something. And each book is the story. I mean, that's the only way I think they're going to be able to do certain stories well. You're not going to be able to cram, anytime they do, like when we were talking about Marvel,
Right.
They had to do 20-something movies for you to give a crap that half of them disappeared. If they were to have just made the Avenger movies and none of the other movies, no one would give a crap. No one would care that Gamora and Star-Lord weren't together or she didn't remember him. They
Right.
had to do separate stories to make you invest into these characters. And again, we had the compendium, I guess they call them, or whatever,
Yeah.
with the comic book. So we knew what was coming with the Crow. We had the feeling behind it. And I think that's the only way that we were able to fully enjoy the Crows, because we knew
Right.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, that was the whole thing about Speed Racer. I'm there watching it. I know everything. I know everything backward and forward in that movie, whatever, and it's affecting me in a different way than some dudes like, oh, this is stupid. They got a talking monkey or whatever, or monkeys in this thing, and I don't know what to make of this thing, and the cars are doing all these tricks and all this, and they don't understand what's going on in this thing. Same thing with the Crow. We have all the backstory. We know where all these crazy lines of dialogue are coming, poses, scenes. It's just like, oh crap, there's that scene that was in the book, and they're just, oh, I know these lines. I can recite these lines too. It's almost like it's a read along or sing along type movie, because they kept so much of that intact. I just think it's gonna be sad, but you know what? We have Brandon's version for we've had it already for quite a while here, and I honestly, after viewing it, I thought it held up pretty well. I had mentioned I mentioned some parts that were in special effects that were, but, and then some plot holes that I thought were, were kind of, that's the part. And then what gets more frustrating is that I remember liking it for what it was and not knowing what was on the cutting room floor, but knowing what's on the cutting room floor. I feel more of a travesty has happened with Brandon Lee's legacy, what should have been his legacy. It shouldn't have been less Brandon Lee on the screen. It should have been more Brandon Lee. But I think, when you're facing a time crunch and you're trying to fill these holes, I still think that there could have been a way to finish the film a different way.
But we don't know if there's a gag order and Linda didn't want the stuff in there. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, she did. She said, she goes, less blood. I don't want to see Brandon with a bunch of blood all over. And they showed her all the scenes. And they even showed her, what they had. And she goes, yeah, I don't want to see Brandon like this. And there's a lot of emotion attached to this. Your son got, murdered.
Yeah.
You're watching these scenes and you're just like looking at it. I know we're almost done with this episode, but did you know that prior to his death, Brandon Lee had filed a complaint with the studios that they were overworking him and the working conditions were subpar, and now the plot thickens, doesn't it?
And you're going to end it on that. So, hey, but you know what? And what is it? What did I say that last time when I commented about the last time somebody wanted to make a comic more like, or a movie more like the comic? He got killed. And on that note,
But you know what?
you got
That
any gum?
that could be a whole other thing for controversies and let's just say this. Not obviously because we don't want this to become the Crow podcast, but we will save we'll let a couple of other shows pass until we can what we'll do is we'll revisit the Crow and we'll call it controversies, myths, legends, and curses and stuff, and we'll focus on a little bit of that. Then what we've been talking about. We can play around with some of the things that people are saying on the internet. And mind you, these aren't our opinions. We're just going to kind of just speculate on some of these things. But that was one of the facts that had come up that when I was doing some research when we were looking into this episode. Brandon Lee had filed a complaint. John Polito, I think that's his name, the one who played Gideon, actually was complaining that Brandon was working so many hours and actually filed this complaint along with the studio as well, that he felt that they were overworking Brandon, and in some conditions he wasn't wearing shoes or shirts and cold weather and all kinds of stuff.
There's that picture of him in that big thick jacket playing Game Boy. So
Game
that
Boy.
means it was, and he was in that with the rain.
Yep.
Oh,
They were. Well, see, here we go again. I mean, we could talk about the crazy things, but he would get into an ice bath before these scenes because he wanted to feel what it would be like to be cold and dead, coming out of the grave. Yeah. So, okay, another thing, Brandon Lee.
Heath Ledger.
Dun, 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 dun. Brandon,
he's the one who put the thing in the. He wanted to see how it felt to get shot.
Brandon Lee studied at Emerson College, and he left after a year to train under the Strasberg acting, where it's all the method acting. And so, yeah, we're talking about that he went like above and beyond. And like I said, I've already issued my theory that I've given you before, and that is a very why would somebody do that? And I'm not going to mention it because that opens up 1,000 can of worms. But so you know what?
We'll save that. Yes, we'll save it.
You know exactly what I theorized. And a person that acts in the method, why not do that? You know what I'm saying? And that gets
Okay. We'll tie that up and put that. It's already going on 3 hours.
Yeah, but no, I mean. This is. I hope that we dove into the Crow, and I hope that we gave you a good dose of Crow talk. And definitely, you know what? There is still so much more that we want to talk about. But my brother is right. We have hit our 3 hour mark, and there's still so much. But we promise we're going to do another episode. And this is going to be about the controversies, the myths, the legends, the rumors, and all that related to Brandon Lee and the Crow, and the creation of the Crow, and all the little nooks and crannies that can be out. And who knows? Maybe we'll have some special guests to talk about more of these myths and legends and controversies that surround this already tragic tale. Of the movie and the comic book that is so beloved by many comic fans around the world. But I want to thank you guys for listening. We will see you guys next week for sure. And Roland, did we come up with a new slogan for the show yet?
No, see, that's already been used. But I will say this, one thing that I don't know why I didn't bring up in the beginning, but the first time in I don't know how many years, I did a new comic strip for Z&G, Metal Jaw Comics, and I did that all yesterday. I told my kids, you know what, I'm going to show you how I do a comic, and then I ended up making one, and I put it out, and I already have a script for the next strip. So check it out. I don't know why I didn't say it in the beginning, but
we can tag it into the show. I mean, because I did have a Facebook. Is that where you're putting them on the Facebook page?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
it's on our thing. When we put the YouTube link, we'll definitely there's a link to there. This is awesome to hear. You know what? You're inspiring me now, and after all this crow stuff, I want to draw too. And but I you know
And
I
at the
don't
pretty lights.
I don't know how people accept the faceless people. But see, now it's forgiving. I can just draw an eyeball up here and hey, what's up, and then draw a Balky, and then we'll see. There you go. But definitely Metal Jaw Comics has its first strip in how long has it
Six
been?
years.
How long?
6 years probably.
Wow, it's been
The
6
last time I
years.
probably did one was like my final.
At,
It was the 4th anniversary, and
I saw that. I saw your comic, and you know, at first I was like, man, either you had the future of being able to put masks in comics, and then I was like, no, wait a minute, this is new. This is a new strip that this guy did, and I thought that was really cool that you're able to do that. Congratulations! I think that's an awesome. That's awesome to be able to do. So definitely check out the new Metal Jaw comics and
Zuzu.
keep what is it? Keep reaching for the comics and keep ripping the off.
Keep bending the spines
There you
of your
go.
comics.
Yeah, keep reaching and ripping and bending of the spines. And well, you know what? Put some slogan ideas, and if we pick your slogan, uh, we'll have
I'll rip your comics for free.
Roland will rip your comics for free. I mean, what a better deal can that be? No, but
Ladies in
please
charge.
send us your slogan ideas for Rip Comics Podcast. We need a slogan. We need something to say at the end instead of just dragging on and on and on. We should actually get off the air here. But
Yeah.
but I want to thank you guys again. For me, Will, and for my brother, I want to thank you guys for stopping in and visiting with us on this episode of The Crow. And we'll be back next week with the usual suspects and maybe some other special guests, but we will definitely be talking about comics. So until next time, I'm Robert.
I'm Roland.
And he's out there somewhere saying something. But we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.